in the quaint town of Maplewood, Massachusetts, where the streets were lined with maple trees and the air always seemed to smell like autumn. Emma Reynolds lived a quiet life. She was a school teacher at the local elementary school, and everyone in town knew her as the kind-hearted woman who always had a smile for everyone. But beneath her warm demeanor, Emma carried a deep sadness that few people knew about. Years ago, when Emma was just 22, she had fallen in love with a man named Jack Cooper. Jack was everything Emma wasn't: adventurous, spontaneous, and full of life. He was a photographer who traveled the world, capturing the beauty of far-off places and people. But despite their differences, Emma and Jack had an undeniable connection. They met one summer at a mutual friend's wedding, and from that moment on, they were inseparable. Their love story was like something out of a movie. They spent their days exploring hidden trails in the nearby woods, their nights lying under the stars, talking about their dreams and the life they wanted to build together. Jack would tell Emma stories of his travels, and Emma would listen with wide-eyed wonder, imagining a life filled with adventure and excitement. But as the summer drew to a close, reality began to set in. Jack's photography career required him to travel constantly, and Emma had her teaching job in Maplewood. They tried to make it work: long-distance calls, letters, and the occasional visit, but it wasn't enough. Jack's need for adventure and Emma's desire for stability pulled them in opposite directions. One cold December night, Jack sat down with Emma and told her the truth. "I love you, Emma, more than anything, but I don't think I can give you the life you want. You deserve someone who will be there for you, who can build a home with you, and I'm not that person." Emma's heart broke. She had known this moment would come, but it didn't make it any easier. "But I don't care about any of that," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I just want you." Jack shook his head sadly. "You say that now, but I know you. You want a family, a home, and I can't give that to you. I'll always be chasing the next horizon, and that's not fair to you." With those words, Jack left, and Emma's world crumbled. She watched him drive away, knowing that her first love was gone, leaving her with nothing but memories of a perfect summer and a heart full of what-ifs. Years passed, and Emma threw herself into her work. She became a beloved teacher, always giving her students the love and attention she felt she had lost. She dated a few men over the years, but none of them ever compared to Jack. Her friends encouraged her to move on, to find someone who would give her the stable life she wanted. But deep down, Emma knew her heart still belonged to Jack. One crisp autumn day, nearly 10 years after Jack had left, Emma was walking home from school when she saw something that made her heart skip a beat. There, standing at the edge of the town's main street, was Jack. He looked older, his once wild hair now streaked with gray, but those same piercing blue eyes met hers, and in that moment, it was as if no time had passed at all. Emma froze, her mind racing. What was he doing here? Why now, after all these years? Jack smiled and walked toward her, his hands in his pockets. "Emma," he said softly, "it's been a long time." Emma could barely speak. "Jack, what are you doing here?" Jack looked around at the familiar town, the same streets they had walked together all those years ago. "I came back to find you. I've spent the last 10 years searching for something, chasing sunsets and horizons, but none of it meant anything without you." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. "Why now? After all this time?" Jack sighed, his eyes full of regret. "I was a fool, Emma. I thought I needed the world, but what I really needed was you. I've been to every corner of the globe, seen things most people only dream of, but none of it compared to the way I felt when I was with you." Emma shook her head, trying to hold back tears. "You left me, Jack. You walked away, and I had to pick up the pieces." "I know," Jack said, his voice full of sorrow, "and I've regretted it every single day since. I wasn't ready back then. I didn't know what I had, and I was too selfish to see that the adventure I was looking for was right in front of me. Emma took a deep breath, the pain of the past swirling inside her. She had dreamed of this moment, imagined what she would say if Jack ever came back. But now that he was here, she didn't know how to feel. Part of her wanted to run into his arms, to pick up where they had left off, but another part of her was afraid. Could she trust him again? Could they rebuild what they had lost? "I don't know if I can do this," Emma whispered, her voice trembling. Jack reached out and gently took her hand. "I understand, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But I came back because I realized something important. Love isn't about the perfect timing or the perfect life. It's about the person you can't live without. And for me, that's you." Emma looked into Jack's eyes, searching for the truth. And in that moment, she saw it. The same love that had burned so brightly all those years ago. The same connection that had drawn them together in the first place. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered, "I never stopped loving you, Jack." Jack smiled, his own eyes misty. "I never stopped loving you either, Emma." They stood there, in the middle of Maplewood's main street, the autumn leaves swirling around them, and for the first time in years, Emma felt whole again. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't be easy, but they had been given a second chance, and this time, they wouldn't let it slip away. In the months that followed, Emma and Jack rebuilt their relationship piece by piece. It wasn't like it had been before. There were scars, and they both had to learn how to trust each other again. But their love had deepened, matured. Jack settled down in Maplewood, taking on freelance photography jobs that allowed him to stay close to home. They bought a small house on the edge of town, and for the first time in years, Emma allowed herself to dream of a future. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Jack turned to Emma and smiled. "You know, I used to think the most beautiful thing in the world was a sunset over the ocean, or the view from the top of a mountain, but now I know the truth." Emma raised an eyebrow, her heart full of love for the man beside her. "Oh, and what's that?" Jack took her hand, his eyes full of warmth. "The most beautiful thing in the world is right here, sitting beside me." Emma laughed softly, leaning her head against Jack's shoulder. "I guess some things are worth waiting for." And in that moment, as the sky turned shades of pink and gold, Emma knew that love wasn't about perfection or timing. It was about the person who made you feel like you were home, no matter where you were or how long it took to find each other again. Moral: true love is not about perfect timing or ideal circumstances. It's about the person who makes you feel like you're home. And sometimes, even after time apart, love can find its way back when both hearts are ready to embrace it again.